What is up, our Legacy Warriors? Another episode of Legacy Digging with Two Native Sons. And when you think about the daily activities, the things that you're doing on a daily basis, how many of you are tapping into your mindset? It is one of those things, it's the basic foundation that a lot of us overlook. It's an interesting thing. If you think about football, Vince Lombardi, every time he would bring his team out, he would say, "This is a football." And that's a basic foundation for the game of football. And so it's the same thing for us as individuals. The mindset is your biggest thing that you need to work on because that's going to lead to everything else. So on today's episode, we have a great individual coming on with us as a guest. I'll have Patrick introduce so I don't butcher the name, just out of respect. So
Absolutely, guys. So we've got Joey Drolshagen here. Super excited to have you as a guest. And Joey, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Yeah. So great pronunciation. Great job with the pronunciation. And I love the analogy back to the football. I'm excited to be here with you guys today. So I'll just tell you, I grew up in really struggling, trying to find my way in life and stuff. And I was taught that a man gets a job, supports a family, and hopefully lives long enough to enjoy some retirement, right? A lot of us have heard that. I've heard things, that finances, I'll show my age here, but what do you think we are, the Rockefellers? And comments like that, money doesn't grow on trees. And I grew up in financial, struggle, a lot of struggle in my parents' lives and things like that growing up. And then I carried that same things, and I didn't want to, but I carried those same things into my adulthood, and early on. And I became a student of the works I do today. I have a 28 year in corporate America, helping companies in bankruptcy back to profitability. And I was really good at, but it's never what I wanted to do. This here, helping people living better lives, like inspiring, motivating, and leading people to live in better lives, has been a passion of mine since I was 22. But I didn't know how to do it in my own life. And I went through a lot of struggle. And it wasn't until later on, I'm looking forward to talking about this today, is that's the mindset that sets that limit for how high we go. It sets that glass ceiling, whatever we want to call it, is set in the mindset. And like you said, so often that's overlooked, and we try to work and make things happen and everything else. And we end up, people end up living mediocre lives when there's so much more available to us. So excited to get into these details of this today.
Man, I love that how blunt you are about the situation, right? Because a lot of times the human psyche is so weird because it is our biggest cheerleader when we need it, right? When you are probably going through the worst times of your life, you're the one that picks yourself back up. You're the one that kind of self-motivates you to get out of the situation. But yet at the same time, when we're not focusing on our mentality, we're our biggest critics, and we say the worst things to ourselves at the same time. So, but I appreciate what you're saying, because I think a lot of times people fail to recognize that they are one or two, maybe have one or two stumbling blocks that are coming from themselves. And often if they can get past that, they go next level. But also we hold ourselves back. So yeah, I mean, please share and tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I love that you said that. All of our stumbling blocks are coming from within. All of them. And even like you said that, I understand what you're saying there. The hardest times of our life, typically the hardest times of our life, we reach out and get assistance from other people. We get support. We get, whatever it is we need to get through those. It's when we're trying to do something that we lock ourselves. I call this the Antichrist. Because I live between my two ears, and the most I'll ever get out of it is based on my experiences and all of that, my knowledge and know-how of things. And it just traps me into living this limited life by doing so, when there's so much more available. Have you guys heard the phrase, out of the blue? I talk to a lot of people, and I work mainly with business owners, entrepreneurs, and realtors. And I've worked with almost 1,000 clients over the past decade. And one of the things I learned for myself, and I learned and I see in them, and I'll talk about the mechanics in a minute, but I see where we get in our own way and we don't even realize we're doing it. And that's why like coaching, and not all of it, but coaching or assistance or something, it can help us see things. And it's why I work with a coach in my life, because they can help me see something I don't see in my own life. It's so embedded in my programming. It just makes sense. That's what I would do under that scenario. And it's the thing causing my limitation.
I
So
think, well,
no, go on.
so the conversation piece, you talked about how you grew up, the environment, the surrounding situation, and then you also talk about reaching out, asking for help. I think it's a unique thing about growing up, our environment, what our parents speak into us, because that's where a lot of this starts. Is as kids, we're like, I will never do what my mom did to me, how my dad did this, and then all of a sudden that's what you're doing, and so it's just a
Yes.
vicious cycle that doesn't stop. But then also when you highlight about reaching out and asking for help, if you think about looking at your circle, the people you surround yourself with, how that also bleeds into it. So the thing is, like this glass ceiling that a lot of us have, or that we struggle to overcome, that circle that you develop is going to be an extension of that mindset piece, of that limitation that you have, unless you do the deep work. So it's a unique thing how you look and things just interlace, and how people are so quick to not be aware, because we end up getting on autopilot and just keep doing the same things over and over again, and then struggling, and we're getting mad. We're like, why are we stuck here? And we're not doing the deep dive like we should.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's exactly almost you almost don't even need me here, man, based on what you're saying. But like as an instance for that is I worked with a realtor recently, and they moved. I forget where they moved from, but they moved over to like the Nashville, Tennessee area. And they didn't know anybody, they didn't know anything, about what was, and so they moved there, and within days they're getting leads for listings. They're having, all of a sudden things are showing up with buyers. They did minimal advertising before they went, just saying I'm coming to town, stuff like that and everything. And this stuff is just rolling, and we're talking, they're going, I can't believe this. And then about a month and a half into it, they started going to networking events, which realtors do, right? And so they started sitting around with all the other realtors, and they started hearing about all the limitations and the interest rates, and all how much overly saturated it is with agents in that area and everything. And within a matter of 2 weeks, they could see their business declining. And that culture, that programming, it starts at birth. And we can let everybody off the hook, because whoever raised us did the best they could do for us with what they had to work with. And so they did the best they could do. And so we move through that, and then we move into childhood with friends, we go into school, we go into jobs, we go into relationships, whatever it may be, and it's just a continuation of conditioning. And so the conditioning I'm talking about, and like you had said, Patrick, is we're doing this unconsciously. We're living this way. And one of the things I'll ask people whenever I do a workshop is, how many of you would ever speak to another person the way you talk to yourself?
Mm.
How many would ever let another person talk to you the way you talk to yourself?
Never.
We wouldn't allow somebody else to do that. And it is kind of funny, but it's so demeaning. And so here's why it's demeaning, is we have a conscious mind. Our conscious mind, we have control over. It's the words we use, the thoughts we entertain, the people we hang out with, the books we read, what we watch on TV. A lot of times I'll talk about, if you're watching CNN, constant negative news, you're going to live a negative life, and so all that's in the conscious, right? And then we have the subconscious mind. We don't have control over the subconscious mind. All it does is just absorbs whatever the conscious mind is focused on. And then within the subconscious mind, there's this motherboard that holds all of our programming, our experiences, our conditioning, our belief systems, all of that's in that motherboard. And where the magic happens is the subconscious is what triggers our brain waves to the actions we take or don't take. So that's why when you have somebody, when I talk to somebody and they're struggling financially, and all they talk about is, I don't know where I'm going to get the money to pay the bills. Every time I get extra money, something comes up to take it, and I can't get ahead. And they continue talking like that, and that's being absorbed, put into that conditioning, and then that's triggering brain waves to experience more and more and more of that same thing. And so you get people that get some financial upset, and it can lead to financial disaster. Same thing with people with health. Even when we talk about, the way we talk about our health, and I hear so many people talk about getting older and things like that, and how this has happened, now they're on this med, now they're on, and they put so much focus on it, and guess what happens to their health? It deteriorates and gets worse and worse, and it's because we're putting the focus there. So if you look at what I do, it works in any area of our life. I apply it a lot to businesses and to businesses, entrepreneurs, and realtors, but it applies to any area of our life. It's our relationships and everything. It starts with that conscious mind. And so Wallace Wallace has a quote I love. And he says, if you are not consciously choosing to be rich, excellent, and healthy, then you're unconsciously choosing to be poor, mediocre, and unhealthy. And isn't that what you said in a different way there? With so many people are living unconsciously, and they're going, man, this isn't my fault. This is because of the situation, it's because of the circumstances, because of the conditions around me. And every one of those things I can prove is bullshit. That it's based on this here.
Yes.
It's based on what's in our conditioning and things like that. So for years, from the time I was 22 until I was in my upper 30s, I worked on all this stuff like The Secret. I worked on positive thinking. I thought I could positive think my way into the life I wanted, but it didn't happen. And things just continually grow worse or stayed in that struggle state. It wasn't until I understood the subconscious, the power of it, and how it plays out in our total mindset that I learned how to and worked with coaches and a lot of certifications and things like that to learn how to reprogram that subconscious conditioning, that I was able to then take those thoughts like finances, money doesn't grow on trees, and turn it into there's so much financial abundance available that every living, breathing person could experience more than they could ever use, and there'd still be an unlimited supply. That money literally grows on trees because it's paper. And that thought started changing the way I would talk and the way I would think about money. It started changing that programming and the belief system in the subconscious. And that's how I've been able to rise up above that and build the businesses that I've built and had this experience, this success I've experienced. And every one of my clients I take through the same thing.
I love that. You know, what's really interesting as you're talking, and I'm kind of thinking of my own evolution and growth that I've had, right? I used to find myself always rooting for the underdogs. And, but I think it's because I always envisioned and hoped that I myself was an underdog. It had, given the right moment, the right situation. And that has completely flipped, right? I could tell you back in the day, I was the biggest anti-Patriots fan ever, right? But then I have the most respect for Belichick, for Brady, because it is so hard not only to get to that area or that pinnacle of winning, but to stay on top is so much more work, right? And so I found myself where, again, hated watching Kobe Bryant because he was killing my Spurs, year after year, right? I was a really big Tim Duncan fan. I was a big Nowitzki fan, right? So all of these guys, but every night he would come in and he'd drop 30, 50, 60, 75 points. And then, when you look back on the legacy that he left, and, from a writer's perspective, he has one of the greatest poets about being in the moment. And, there's a huge respect. And so even with that unconscious piece, to realize that, as I'm transitioning, as I'm, evolving, so are those things, because I have a newfound respect for those things. And that's who I want to be. I want to be the consistent winner time after time.
Yes. And once we've shifted that conditioning and stuff, you said to stay on top takes more work, but I don't agree with that, only because the work is getting that shift happening, changing those patterns, those paradigms, those belief systems. Once we change that and we're living consciously through our conscious mind, it becomes easy, it becomes fun. And this is how, there's a lot of coaching programs out there that talk about, if you want something, you got to take massive actions and you got to put in exhaustive efforts and you got to be willing to trade off some other things for it and stuff like that. Again, I say bullshit. I've achieved in my life, and I've helped, like I said, almost 1,000 clients achieve over the past decade, to where it becomes easy. It becomes fun. It becomes enjoyable. These people, an entrepreneur starts a business. He never starts a business thinking he's trading away his whole life in order to achieve that. That's not his dream. But we get into it and we hear so many people talk, again, conditioning. This is how it is when you do this. One of the things I work with a lot of realtors, and they're really surprised because I don't have an A, B, C plan to get them to D. So many other programs and things like that, somebody achieved a huge level of success and everything, and that's, you know, great. And so people are going to them saying, how'd you do that? Tell me how you did that. And they try following the same thing. And do you know what percentage of people ever achieve those same results?
Very little.
2.
Less than 1%. And the reason being is each of you guys, your pathway is going to be totally different than mine. I can't lay out your pathway. So what I've done is I've dedicated the last 3 decades of my life of figuring out how to find my pathway. And then as a result of that, it's come out with, now, how do I help other people to find theirs? See, our conditioning, we have similarities, but our conditioning is unique to the individual. So a one size all will never work for everybody. Right. We have to get in there and identify what those are and shift that belief pattern, which then opens the door. And I'm telling you guys, I've taken realtors, like, I love that I get to do this. I don't mean to talk so fast, but I've helped realtors when I met them that were doing about $7.5 million in sales a year. Within the time we worked together, at the end of that year, they toppled over $23 million in revenue, in sales, rather.
Nice.
I've helped business owners go from $34,000 a month. You know, I had a guy that came to me. He said, I'm making $34,000 a month. I've been doing so the last 5 years, and I'm drawing on a line of credit to make up the difference every month, you know, and so this has been building over a 5-year period. So I talk it to him, and this is another part here. Every person I work with, I start with developing what I call a dynamic vision. And I have road mapping tools I take people through. I get them to that end point. What's success look like to you? What's that end point look like? And how do you live in that success? What's your life look like? You know, and so I start there. And the highest I could get this guy to in his greatest vision for his life was $50,000. Because at $50,000, he would not have to draw on the line of credit, and he could tweak, you know, little by little, start paying it off and such. And that was the high, and that's all conditioning based. Where it won't even allow us to look outside of that. And at one point, so I said to him, I finally got him almost to $150,000 to look at the vision of it. And when we first started, I go, what do you think of that? Like, how's that feel for you? He goes, it's unrealistic. And I go, well, let me ask you this. Do you want to live a realistic life? Like, do any of us really want to live? If we look at our desires, they're unrealistic. But we cut ourselves off from ever getting to experience anywhere near that before we even take an action into it. So I got him to the 150. We built that up, you know, things like that and such. And do you know, within the 4th month was January, February, and March. And each of those 3 months, he was between $200,000 and $250,000 in revenue for those months.
Oh, man.
Wow.
He didn't add any staff. He didn't add any sales. He didn't add any marketing costs. He didn't add, it's not like he threw a bunch of money at it to get that. He shifted his mindset and got more into alignment. And here's why it's important, you guys, because when we're living up here at the Antichrist and we're running 150 miles an hour, those out of the blue opportunities are constantly showing up, but we don't see them. So we have to get out of that mode. And that's one of the things I help a lot of my clients on, is getting out of that 150 mile an hour mode of making it happen and doing what it takes and giving up what you have to give up to get them to slow down a little bit. And all of a sudden it's like, man, this client came out of the blue. Do you know that guy in Tennessee I talked about? Do you know what happened to him? When I said about the networking and stuff that, you know, that went from like all this business right away to dropping off, is he started letting that conditioning get in his head from listening to other people. He bought into it. And then right away it starts clouding up our thinking to where it's like, well, dang, how can I do this? Who do I think I am? All that self-talk that ends up consuming us, so we don't see those avenues showing up for us anymore.
Wow.
So once we went through that process and identified what they were and shifted those, he could start experiencing going back up again. And I'll tell you what took me years, and I mean years, to figure out, understand, implement, and see change on. I love getting to see people do that in weeks now.
Oh man, the quantum leap is crazy. Yeah, that's amazing.
It absolutely is. Absolutely, yeah.
Oh man,
so
that's exciting.
It's very interesting because everybody talks about the power of networking groups. But it is a very interesting thing about how you don't realize, because a lot of times business owner, like there was a post going around on Facebook that everybody and their mothers was jumping on, that we know that are business owners, talk about how hard it is, this and that. And I was like, you've got to flip this, because if you're struggling, what are you focusing on? And right here's a perfect example. So it's a very interesting thing to see that. But like you talk that aspect of just the flip, just the small things, but also you had highlighted that it's not a one size fits all. And that's where we see a lot of individuals run into a situation where this is the only way to do it. And I'm like, if you have somebody that's telling you this is the only way to do it, you need to turn around and run as fast as you can somewhere else. But it's just how people fall into the trap, because people sometimes speak very well, but then they end up causing issues for other people because they don't see and they don't understand. And it is just a unique thing, just how you're highlighting different things here. I was like, man, this is necessary stuff that needs to be heard.
And even to the point of like what you guys are doing right now, I'm going to say you guys are successful podcasters as far as what I know of you right now, right? And even in that, if somebody asks you, how'd you do it? What'd you do? You're going to give them the steps you took to do it, right? But let me ask you guys honestly, there were some things that showed up that you couldn't have thought of or planned out or anything else that brought stuff together. And that's the aspect that's missed when we try to follow somebody else's path to get someplace. Because in that person's path, they may not even be aware of it. There were things that had to happen in a line within certain points to bring those things together that they couldn't have put together in a strategy or even known to. And so as we move into the side of things and as we start opening up the doors, it's where, like, I'll take realtors who have been in real estate 12 years, they're barely getting by, and they no retirement in real estate unless you build your own and stuff, and they're like just so fatigued and burned out and tired of it. And in the beginning of a new year, the whole thing starts over again every year, and they get it. And business owners, same thing. Most January 1st is you start over. Now you're trying to beat last year's numbers and all that and everything. And when we get into this flow of it, it's where all of a sudden that realtor I told you about that went from 7.5 to over $23 million in that year. Do you know that was the only year of her adult life? She'd been in real estate 14 or 15 years at the time. It was the only year in her adult life that she took 5 weeks of vacation in that same year.
Oh,
one of them was a 2-week trip to Israel that had been on her bucket list for decades. So when I say that it's about when we get into this place and we get into this alignment with it, all of a sudden it starts growing and it becomes fun again. People who are burned out get back excited. And before you even do the vision, the number one master key to all this stuff is you got to have an open mind. And I'll tell you guys, I have seen businesses that are flowing downward, and they're so closed-mindedness. They're so closed up in their mind that they'd rather see that business fail than to look at an opportunity like the things I talk about and applying it. And that really saddens me.
Man, I love your passion, Joey. You could tell that you're really excited about what you do, right?
Yeah.
And even that, you've talked about, when it gets fun again, right? And what's interesting is that a lot of times what we see is people where they turn around and they're bogged down, right? Oh, we're so busy. Oh, I'm so slammed. And I'm like, isn't this what you wanted? You wanted the opportunity to grow. You wanted the opportunity to grow your numbers, but you also wanted, at some point to be able to expand, right? And so again, that it turns into, I can't afford that. I can't do that. Right. And then for me personally, it changed from I can't afford that to I just need a few more sales and I got that. I just need a few more policies and I got that.
Yeah. You make a great point with that too. And I'll tell you, those people that talk about being so busy and everything else, it's a culturally learned trait in the United States. That we work and we work and we work, and then when we get done, we work harder. And if something's not working, we put more effort into it. We put more hours into it. We just keep going and going and going. No, nobody wants to have a business that they got to beat themselves up for. But it'd be unrealistic to build your business to the desire you want and have fun doing it. That goes against the culture, right?
Yep.
I have people who, when they start achieving things, they'll go, man, I feel like I didn't deserve this. I feel like this isn't, like, I'm not doing enough. Well, you're not feeling like that. Your programming is telling you that. You know that voice we hear in our head when you have that tennis match going and you're not even part of it. You're just kind of watching the conversation. But that's that conditioning right there. That's playing out in our thinking, and it's always driving us. That's the reason why somebody will get this great business idea. And I'll give you an example. I had a guy that came to me. He had this incredible business idea. I was like, man, I would almost love to pursue that, but I have the passion where I have it, And so but for 5 years he had never tried to, or 4 years he had never tried to do it, and he couldn't figure out why. So we got into it, and what I helped him to figure out, and this is within a couple weeks, I helped him figure out that about 12 years ago he bought a car wash. And he invested into it. He bought it and everything else. And he just dove head first, bought the car wash and everything. And then 2 months later, he started realizing, like, he never checked traffic patterns in that area. He never checked to see how much was moving back and forth through there or anything else, where the other car washes, were, any of that stuff. And so he ended up within that first year closing that business. And he's carried that all the way through to now as a negative and why he shouldn't start a business.
Mm.
So he's got this genius mind with these incredible ideas that for 10 years wouldn't, or for the time since he closed it, he wouldn't even take a step into. So in our conversations, I helped him shift his perceptions, and that's where all that conditioning and all that stuff is. I'll go into in a second, but so we shifted it, and when I helped him realize, that was such a teaching moment in your life.
Right.
It didn't put you into being homeless. It didn't take away. It was a teaching moment. And all it taught you is to do your upfront investigations before you dive into something. So now you have this business idea. What haven't you looked at that you should? And you started outlining that, and that started building more of the excitement, This guy is a multimillionaire within a couple of years of doing that, just based on doing it. He was able to walk away from a corporate job and everything else, and is just killing it. And now I'm going, maybe I should have found some time to put into the doing that. but here's the thing, you guys, the reality of our life, the reality of both of your lives and my life, the reality of our life is make believe. Because the reality of our life is based on our perceptions. So when his perception was he failed, and he didn't want to take a chance like that again. Once I was able to help him shift that perception as a learning lesson in his life, and he can use that to apply to this one, it changes perception. The really cool thing about that is at any time we can look at our perception, which again is our beliefs, our patterns, paradigms. We can change those. And when we shift our perceptions, we shift the reality of our world. So all these people that are talking about how busy they are or how much competition there is and all this stuff and getting stuck by that, the ones I end up getting to work with, and we shift that perception, it opens them up to start achieving what they want to achieve easier, quicker, and with some fun to it as well.
Love that. I love that you always include that fun aspect, because I think it gets lost in the sauce so easily.
Yeah. And one of the big ones really is fear. So I'll tell you guys a quick thing is I think it was February. I took my first run off of a 2,000-foot mountaintop strapped to a hang glider.
Nice. And
I did that because I thought I was afraid of heights. But in doing it, what I realized, I'm not. I'm afraid of falling.
Mm-hmm.
And when my feet left the ground, there was so much fear. I can't, like part of me was so surprised that I was even standing up there with it. But another part of me was going, I don't know what I'm going to do, but there's no way I'm going to take those 3 steps into the air, and I'm going through it. And it was like, man, just stop and stop and stop. And all of a sudden, the moment my feet left the ground, the fear was gone. It subsided. And it was just this most incredible flight experience I've ever had in my life. Like, I felt like, I love eagles. I felt like I was soaring for the first time in my life, And so in that, with our fear, that's another thing in that conditioning. People that are afraid of starting a business, they're afraid of that growth. They're afraid of what they have to do to grow their business. They will not take those actions because it won't trigger the brainwaves. It'll take the actions to be safe and be protected. And one of the things it takes to understand this stuff is if we live in taking common actions, we take the same actions, we're in our comfort zone, taking the same actions over and over and over, it will only ever produce common results. The only way to get uncommon results is we have to be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable in the sake of taking some uncommon actions.
100%.
So those 3 tools right there, a beginner mindset, having an open mind, a vision, and then the one I just stated is what opens us up to be able to, to be able to bring about that change and start experiencing life completely different in our life.
Man, that's incredible.
The legacy that Joey's leaving is just trying to help other people detach here and push that on to future generations. But that goes back to the environment that kids grow up in. And so, like, if we would just allow kids to keep their imagination and not limit it, like, the difference that we would see everywhere would be huge. But yeah, so the legacy that Joey's living here, it's already here. So
Right.
here you go.
Well, and one of the things I have a nonprofit that I try to feed into and stuff is going into schools and helping kids to open up, because what's part of our conditioning as we start getting older, we getting into school even, and it's Joey, quit looking out the window. Joey, pay attention. Joey, do your reading. Joey, put your head down. Joey, whatever it is. And so, and in our culture, without even meaning to, start shutting down our imagination. So we hear things like it's not mature to live through your imagination, but that's where your greatest desires and all that true passionate life you want to live come from, our imagination.
Man,
it's one of our 5 mental faculties. So is intuition. And when we're doing 150 miles an hour and massive actions and exhaustive efforts and stuff, we can't be living through our intuition. It works perfect for every one of us. But it's only as loud as our willingness to hear it. And that's where that connection to those out of the blue things come.
Yeah, trusting intuition is huge. I know so many people who have gone against it, listened to other people. You have people who basically they talk about mindset and they listen to podcasts and they wake up and they're finding inspiration. They read all the books, but they fail to take uncommon action, like you said. That's huge. Yeah.
And most people can't even tell you why that is. It goes to the knowing doing gap. Our knowing is in our conscious mind. The doing part is in the subconscious. That's what comes from. And so when I'm working with people, we are literally rewiring brainwaves to open up and take different actions. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, because everybody knows somebody in that realm, right? The people who are not taking that. What's an easy or simple tip for somebody who's listening to this? Obviously, we want them to reach out and connect with you, but what would be something that that you might encourage somebody who is kind of in that step where they're, where do they start?
Yeah, the other good thing about a vision is it gives us something to focus on outside of our present situation, circumstances, and conditions. So the more we're consciously focused on the things around us we don't like, the more that we're creating. So one of the places I would say to start is pick one thing in your life that you'd really love to experience and really get a vision around that, where you can see it, where you can feel doing or being that person in that vision, and get that started and start putting some more focus on that. Because what you're doing is your conscious mind is focused on a vision rather than the problems and struggles. So the subconscious mind is absorbing that, and watch and see if things don't start showing up that way. More that way. Now, that doesn't deal with all of the the repatterning and reconditioning of the subconscious, but at least get the ball rolling in that direction where you're getting your conscious mind off of what you don't want and onto what you do want.
So I am curious, because looking at the profile and reading everything, one of the things, and you've talked about it too, is the real estate arena. So my curious aspect is here, what drew you into really wanting to work and focus on real estate agents?
I spent it's funny. Like, I've always loved real estate. Even back in my 20s, I had my builder's license up in Michigan. I would buy houses flip them, redo them, flip them, rent them, things like that and stuff. And I always enjoyed the whole real estate realm. But once I left corporate, I actually started doing this in personal transformation. And as I started going down there, everything was going great at the time, but I just wanted to expand it more. And I do have a business mind and a lot of business experience and success, but I didn't want to go back into the big corporations anymore. I didn't want to have to cut through all the red tape and do all the labor that's involved just to get to the people and then convince, so that lent me more into the business side. I have my real estate license down here in South Carolina, and I dabble in it and play in it and stuff like that. So it was just a natural flow into, like, I already know real estate. I know what they go through. I know somebody gets all the excitement of becoming a realtor and they see the freedom and the money and all that stuff. And then they get into it. And within the first 2 months, they hear of all the stuff they have to do in order to be successful. And they spend years until they hit burnout trying to do all of those things, and takes the fun and everything. And that, to me, when living that way and knowing firsthand what it's like to live that way, I know I can have a huge impact on people and help them to shift that quickly. And one of the things I do in business and real estate is help my clients to develop systems of accelerating habits. I don't tell them what they are. I help them find out what is it that clicks on that attraction mode to what you do. And then let's do more of that. How do we, how do we get more time into that? And one of the things that I learned that from you guys is when I was in corporate, I traveled the road a lot, probably 2,000-3,000 miles a week for months at a time and stuff. And then later on, when I took over as vice president, I was in the office. And if I had to be in the office for 2 days straight after 5 o'clock, man, I was pissed. I was angry. I was fatigued. I was beat up. I'd go home and just have to lay down and be dead for the night and everything else. There's times in what I'm doing now, I have my office here and then a studio right outside of it with the green screen and stuff. And I'll start filming something at 10, 11 o'clock at night, and I'll work out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And, I go home and I can't sleep because I'm so charged up. It's getting into that phase. And when we live that way, even the efforts and the things we're doing are fun. It's enjoyable. It's recharging rather than draining.
No. Oh man, that's huge. I know it's that cliche saying, right? But when you're enjoying what you do, it doesn't feel like work, and it's so, but like you said, counterintuitive for all the things that we've learned. We do want to get to a call to action here in regards to, you telling us a little bit more about your training and, the things that you offer. But we have this segment where we love practicing the attitude of gratitude and the act of gratitude. And so is there anybody in this moment that you feel like that you would want to maybe just give a thank you to or acknowledge maybe that has got you to where you're at? But we just feel like that sometimes pausing in the moment to be able to remember how we got to where we're at. And again, even if that kudos is just giving it to yourself because maybe you've never taken the time to acknowledge that publicly, right? But is there anybody or anything?
I have a book. Should I start on page 1?
Oh man, that's incredible. I love that.
Oh my God. The first thing that comes to mind is I have a 27-year-old son. His name is Joey. And he, man, in raising him, he has been one of my greatest teachers in my life. And learning that. But I mean, there's been so many people. You guys are familiar with the late Bob Proctor. He was a mentor of mine. I have every client I've worked with, it just goes on and on. Like it's endless. I even got a best dog in the world that we went walking this morning down dirt roads, because it's where I get centered and fight in nature and stuff. And having that time, it really is endless, the gratitudes. And I have found it's like that for all of us. It's just whether we're focused on that or whether we're focused on what we don't want, the problems.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Yeah, for us, we just know that that's it's been such a game changer for us to be able to pause and be able to remember all those things. And oftentimes, if you're not focused solely on the mindset piece, maybe you forget and you don't have a tangibility piece unless you're journaling, something like that. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. And if I could just add something to that, Patrick, is so often that's what we do is we go, and then we take a break and we look at our gratitudes, and then we go, 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 go. Think about if you incorporated those gratitudes into your everyday flow, how much easier and more positive and more exciting life would be just doing that.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Do you have any additional questions before we get into the CPA?
No,
I know we're sitting here like in awe listening to you, Joey.
Well, no, it has me thinking. So it is just there's stuff that's been spoken, and usually what I say is sometimes it has to be spoken in a different route or just a different light. So there's been plenty of nuggets here, and what we tell our audience, the Legacy Warriors, is going out there and finding one or two, implement, let it grow, and then come back and find other things that maybe didn't stick out before, but because your mind has expanded, it's ready. Come back and listen and see if there's anything else. But Joey's shared quite a few simple, small nuggets that you can implement right away and really just start that work that not work, just the switch here to start leading into what you ideally want.
Well, absolutely. Well, I don't know how I did that. Sorry.
That's okay.
That was an oops.
So tell us the name of your training program and for somebody who's maybe interested in kind of getting different results, taking uncommon action, as we talked about. What does that look like?
Yeah, the name of like I founded IFGT Coaching Consulting, and the IFGT, I'm going to clean it up for the podcast, stands for It's Frickin' Go Time.
I love that.
So you can figure out which word I fixed or adjusted. And it really is. It's about like, let's stop playing small. Let's stop waiting until someday. Let's stop trying to do this, petty little things and stuff to get somewhere, to get 10 minutes of happiness, and let's dive in and do it. So the SMT method, which stands for subconscious mindset training, is where all of my programs are built out of. And it's all about that total mindset and that alignment with it. And it's like, I'm really excited about this. I don't say it's bragging, but I'm really excited as I was on me and SMT method were featured in Times Square between Christmas and New Year's on the big marquee downtown. Wow. And the one that's like stands out from all the other ones because of the works with SMT and the results that's come. So it's really starting to get some traction, and it's becoming exciting. And so and I have programs varying from like group mastermind things weekly or to 12 weeks, 6-month program to VIP 1 year type of things, and it's really set to meet people where they are. I could have easily went out and set these things at tens of thousands of dollars and stuff like that and everything, and I'd get some clients, but I really want to work with the people. To me, it doesn't matter where you are, it matters where you want to go. So 2 points of reference I work off of, I'll throw this in. One is, where exactly are you right now? And if somebody can come to me and have a conversation and tell me where they are right now, I can help them develop that second point of reference, which is, where do you want to be? And then from there, we just start moving through the process. We develop that vision.
I love that. Man, that's cool.
I also am one of the only coaches that I know of that offer 100% money back guarantee. And the reason I do that is, and again, I have almost 1,000 clients over 10 years. I've not had one person ask me for a refund. What people tell me is, you should be charging 3 or 4 times what you're charging. And I'll say, okay, so can I bill you the difference from what you invested? And they go, no, what? But my belief behind this is, I know this works. I have the testimonials. I have my life and so many other lives that it's impacted. If I work with somebody and they really come to the table wanting that change, and something doesn't work for some reason, I don't want their money then.
No, that's huge, especially in the realm of coaching, right? Because so many people are developing their niche. They're maybe trying to find opportunity. And again, not to discredit, because who knows, what they have until you've maybe gone and done the research. But it's not, what I feel genuinely from you is that you have worked out the kinks already, right? Because you tested it on yourself, and you don't get 1,000 clients, right, by testing the waters. So I love to hear that. And I know you mentioned that you would have kind of an offer for some of the listeners today.
Absolutely, yeah. So going into that first point there, that open-minded, being open-minded. So anybody that is open-minded, I want to offer a quick 10-minute brief call with me. They can go to coachwithjoey.com, all one word, coachwithjoey.com, and they can schedule a 10-minute call with me. On that call, one of the second things is starting to develop that vision. On that call, we'll talk about what that is. What's the one thing in your life you most, gets you like that you would most love to achieve? And we'll start talking about that, as well as some of the roadblocks to come up to avoid, that halts so many people from moving forward with it. And then there's another gift on top of that. At the call, I'll give them a free case study video that's about 40-minute long video. And it got some humor and things like that, but it's all about how to start taking these tools and implement them into your life.
Oh man, that's huge. Yeah, I mean, well worth the 10 minutes, and thank you for offering that with your time as well. When we talk a lot, we have a lot of guests that come on here, and we have, kind of an ask for a nugget, right? Somebody who is trying to get into the next level, maybe somebody who's trying to get into what you're doing. What piece of advice would you give to somebody as an entrepreneur, as a business owner that is listening to this today?
Yeah, and this is going to sound weird, especially from a business aspect. Set aside goal settings. I don't set goals. The reason I don't set goals is they come from here only. They automatically lead into the strategy and then the laundry list of to-dos of what I'm going to do to achieve it. The goal puts the entire emphasis on me. Even if you got a team, it puts the entire emphasis of control on me. Instead, whatever it is, you want that next level, you want your own business, you want whatever it is, get a vision of that. And a vision will come through your imagination. It'll come through. And a really good vision is a vision when I ask somebody, how are you going to achieve that? And they're, well, I have no freaking idea. That's a good vision. When we put a vision together that we can strategize how we're going to do it, that's a goal.
Okay.
And you'll never achieve a vision, an accomplishment in life without having a vision for what it is. So often my clients, whatever, they achieve this vision and they'll say, the guy at $250,000, he said, I didn't ever think that would be impossible. Even when we talked about, I didn't think it would be impossible at the 150, and he blew above that. So now his next vision is $1 million a month, and he can see it. And that's what happens when we start out in one way. Then as we start achieving that, we can grow that even bigger. And that's how we create that life. And that's how, when you look at somebody who's successful people don't do certain things. Successful people do things a certain way. And they get that alignment to it before they step into with action and effort on their part.
Man, that's huge.
That's a completely different way to look at it. We've had it before. People are like, so what's your vision? And we've talked about impacting 1 billion people. And people are like, well, how do you track that? Or how do you know you're going to hit that? And I was like, I don't know. And it goes back to that same thing with people asking that question of how are you going to do it? It's okay, what limiting beliefs are going to come up, or what can I tell this person that this is why it's not going to work out? So it is very interesting when you're like, why are you asking how is this going to be accomplished? Because that person that's asking it, their limiting beliefs are jumping up and saying that's not possible, it can't be done. And so it is very interesting when you sit there and you're like, oh, that's why it's being asked, is because they're
from this day forward, when that happens, you guys are going to think Antichrist.
Oh man, thank you for all the nuggets today. And this is huge. Again, you got Scott thinking, I'm sitting here thinking of, some of the things that we do already here. Is there anything else that you wanted to highlight, or anything else that you want to talk in our closing minutes today, Joey?
No, just, because people always talk about my energy and how passionate, and I am. This is my life. It's my livelihood. It's me getting to live from 22 years old of knowing what I wanted to do, but not knowing how it would look to this is it. And it's available to every living, breathing person. If you're still breathing, there's a vision in you that's possible for you. And it doesn't matter your age. Your best years can be ahead of you unless you believe they can't be. And so just staying in that place like that of knowing there's something more possible than what that thinking may tell you there is for you.
100%. Man, Joey, it's been such a pleasure to have you and your
Same here, you
expertise.
guys.
Man, we're so excited. I'm going to take advantage of the 10-minute phone call myself as well. But yeah, I mean, just thank you again for providing so much value for our Legacy Warriors. And guys, we will make sure that we have Joey's information.
Show
for sure.
notes.
Show notes. We'll have all of this. You'll get the preview ahead of time. And again, give us that website one more time, Joey.
Coachwithjoey.com.
Perfect. You guys heard it here first.
Coachwithjoey.com.
Make sure that you are hitting that like, subscribe, and also making sure go to Joey's profiles and making sure you're showing support there as well. We will catch you guys on the next one.